we got Javid Basharat versus Mateus Mendonca. I am big on the Basharat brothers, both of them. If you didn't know, the contender fight where Javid first got signed, his brother was fighting a regional fight in Spain, I believe it was, almost at the same time his brother was fighting. And Javid looked amazing in that fight. The man has beautiful straight strikes. 1-2, right down the pipe. He keeps his hands up when they need to be there, right after strikes, and he knows when he can drop them to get his movement in. If he's rolling under punches, and then they're right back in. You know, they're not to his face, but they're right there, ready to pop up. His shoulders are always rolling with the punches. Man, his grappling is slick. There was a moment in one of his fights where he threw a flying knee and just instinctively transitioned to the back without almost touching the ground. And those are only things that you learn from just being on the mat for hours and hours. Mateus is a animal as well himself. We got to see him in the Contender Series with the quick knockout versus Ashik Ajim. And I think we didn't bet that one that season, I believe. But I've been watching some tape. He looks good in his fights, but it's just the resume of his competition that I'm worried about. Javid Basharat has clearly shown he can bang with UFC caliber fighters. And not only that, his fight IQ is very high. Javid's, that is. I see him knowing when to strike when he needs to strike. If he needs to grapple because there's a situation there, he takes it. But if something's not there, he doesn't fight for it. He doesn't force much. Javid stays loose on his feet. I don't ever see him planting too heavy. There was a couple times I saw him get caught in the Gravely fight, I believe. Gets caught, boom, chinned a little bit, resets, backs out. Leg kick. You know, just doesn't allow it to break up his rhythm when you get chinned. There's a lot of fighters that can be a good hammer and not the best nail. But I think we got to see that in Javid where he got to do both of those. He can take it and he can deliver it. Mateus is a little wild, and I think that's a really good matchup for Javid to find some openings with his straight shots, with his slick boxing, in-out style. You don't see Javid sitting in the pocket too much. He's going to hit you, slide, cut an angle as you're coming back, and then hit you again. Peppers up the legs really well. His volume is nice. For how good the volume and his pacing is, he doesn't sweat a crazy amount. He's not gasping for air after the 3 rounds. Naturally, he's a submission and grappler fighter. And finishes, I think, almost all of his fights. I can double check here. Finishes most of his fights. But of course, as you get up higher competition and you're fighting guys that are UFC caliber, yeah, it looks like he had a 100% finish rate before being in the UFC. As you get up and climb that ladder, you're going to get competition that, of course, is going to be harder to finish. But I would not be surprised if we could see a club and sub here from Javid. I just don't see a clear route for Mateus outside of catching Javid with a overhand right or maybe a check hook as they're entering or exiting. But Javid covers well. He exits clean. He doesn't allow people to get off on him too much. And if they get a piece on him, you know, get his chin real quick, exits, resets, and gets right back to his rhythm. So I think Mateus, it's a tough matchup for him on this one. I think Javid should cruise, maybe play a submission prop, like I could see a club and sub happening, or maybe a later round finish as he turns on. Javid looks really good in later rounds as he warms up and gets moving. But I love these two brothers, man. I think they're going to go far in the UFC, and I think he pays the price here. Javid does. I think he sells that minus 400 price very well. All right, moving on to our next fight. We got Mateusz Rebecki. Man, I am excited to see this guy in the lightweight division and how he adds up. And I feel absolutely terrible for Nick Fiore on this one. I mean, what an unfortunate debut to take. And I think on short notice, too. Not like a week, but it wasn't a full 8-week camp. Mateusz Rebecki is like a wrecking ball. If you watch some of his past 2, 3, 4 fights, He is fearless. The man enters, eyes on the target, head moves a little bit when he needs to. I will talk on the head movement a little bit in a second. But when he enters, finds his spot, it is like a dog on a bone covered in steak sauce. The man doesn't stop. He knows when to hurt somebody. He knows when he has them hurt and to keep going. There's two things I noticed about his head movement and head pressure. One, I wish his head movement was just a little better when entering. But when he's there, his head pressure, as in wrestling, grappling, stuffing your forehead into the neck, is, I wouldn't want to be on bottom with him. The man smashes his head through, heavy elbows on the thighs, passing almost immediately. He doesn't sit in your guard to have fun. He's not there for games. He's there to hurt you. He will punch you and smash you until he can pass on the outside, get through, and just start raining blows. Whether on the feet or grappling, there's almost no advantage here for Nick. If you look at Nick's resume, it is not too great. Cool, he's 6-0, wonderful. But his level of competition is nowhere near the Polish wrecking ball that is Rebecki. So just in his last couple fights, Nick has fought Jay Ellis twice in a row. Jay Ellis, the reverse GOAT. Ellis is like 12 and 100, 16 and 106 is his record. He then fought Jerome Mikkel, who is 3 and 12. Nick then fought Andre Burgess, who is 9 and 5. I think that was his single win over an opponent with a winning record. So Nick Fiore, out of all of his 6 fights, one of his opponents had a winning record at the time of the fight. And I'm just double checking one more. Yep, and Steven Seagal was 6 and 20 at the time of their fight. So he has faced nothing near the competition or anybody that even looks, hits, grapples like Rebecki. Mateusz's nickname is Rebeasty, and that absolutely fits in this. He's bigger, he's meaner. Nick isn't even a big lightweight at all. Normally we try to avoid these minus 900 lines when it comes to fight nights, not pay-per-views like this. But I think it is going to be Rebecki all day, every which way. You could probably parlay inside the distance for a couple units, and I think that wouldn't be a terrible play. I just don't see this going the distance. Fiore has nothing to offer in athletics, inside of defense, offense. Mateusz moves forward with relentless tenacity, and I think that this could very well be over in a minute. If you have DraftKings, you could probably sprinkle ladder under a minute, under 2 minutes, under 3 minutes. I think that's just DraftKings that offers that, but those odds should be pretty good, plus a couple 600. Penelope, hey, sorry, my dog's getting into something. Hey, knock it off. Go lay down. Yeah, I think he gets it done very quickly. I think it's going to be a TKO, whether on the feet or on the ground. I don't think he needs to get a sub here. You know, as soon as he gets that top position, I think he's just going to hammer through until the finish, and then we'll call it pretty quickly. This is a tailor-made matchup for Mateusz all the way, and I think they're only going to keep building him a little bit and try to get him a nice spot in the top 15 here in the next year or two to get him a good matchup. So I just would not bet Nick at all. I know I have some dog chasers in my Discord, but there's just no ticket to be had there. And let's move on to the next one here. We got Claudio Ribeiro versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Man, if you wanted to see a fight that was like someone's first time watching UFC and it was just this weekend and they had to tune in at some point, I would probably tune in for the next 2 fights, which would be Abdul versus Claudio and Umar versus Hayoni. I think both of these have a possibility for being fight of the night. Claudio is a powerhouse. I'm not sure if any of you watched his Contender Series debut, but the man starched the other guy, and I want to say 36 seconds, 26 seconds. He kicked him so hard it spun the guy around, and as the guy was coming back around, just a nuke of a left hook, and just the dude was out cold almost immediately. Diving into his regional scene, though, outside of being a powerhouse of a hitter, he's wild. He leaves his chin open. His jiu-jitsu isn't all there. He doesn't like to engage on the ground, which also tells me he's not the best there. He hesitates when his opponents are on the ground and doesn't like to engage in past the guard. So he's still kind of green. I know he's 10-2, but sometimes depending on where you fight, the Brazilian regional scene can be a little lacking. I'll see guys that fight that are soft bodies and they're fighting Captain America, Captain Brazil, I should say. So Claudio is for sure an athlete, hits hard, but he's got Abdulrazak Hassan on the other side of him, who is, I think, a little better version of him. Claudio is probably a little more fast and agile, maybe even more explosively quicker, but Abdul's got more power. Abdul has the experience inside the UFC as well. He's been fighting professionally for quite a long time. I think he fought in Bellator in 2013 or 2015. Abdul's record in the UFC, not the hottest. You know, you look at him and you see, well, he used to be on a crazy run, and then he became against UFC competition and quickly found some holes in his game. I mean, we all remember him getting knocked out by Khalil Williams. Wow, they have it spelled wrong here. That's funny. And then we've seen him get held down by people like Buckley and just outworked. So I think in losing against Malkoun and Buckley, hopefully Razak has found some new light to add to his game. New life, I should say. Sometimes it takes a couple losses like that to realize what you're best at can still be the best thing, can still be your best thing, but you got to add new best things to that. You can't just be a kickboxer. So I'm sure we'll see Abdulrazak Hassan either shoot a little bit or try to make it dirty early against the cage. Just if Abdul watches any tape on Claudio, he should almost immediately realize that Claudio is going to come out hot as heck and hot as ever. Abdul would be smart to press against the cage and burn out the arms of Claudio. Claudio has only seen the distance once. I think I want to say just the 2 times for Abdul. The odds on not going the distance have bounced from minus 1,300 down to minus 900. Not down, obviously, but that's still down in that direction. Minus 900 is just not a play I'd be willing to even parlay with some stuff. The fact that money's come in on that side maybe just tells me that some people like this to go the distance. I'm not letting that sway my decision. I still think it doesn't go the distance. Under 2.5, under 1.5 might be some good plays for fun. Maybe a unit with a money line that you like, but we're either going to have a crazy car crash and it be violent and quick, or we have a crazy car crash that is slow and deliberating. Sorry for the burps. Deliberating. And we see these guys gas at 5 minutes, and then at 7 minutes they can't even pick up their arms anymore. And now we're at 10 minutes and they can't even throw their punches anymore. So this is either going to be a complete banger or it starts slowing down very quickly, and anyone who doesn't go the distance tickets start sweating. I've been there before with Santos and Johnny Walker. I've been there with a couple other heavyweight fights, and not that this is heavyweight, but you know, when you bet on these big boys to bang and they don't, that can be the worst break or bad beat for you. You know, just watching 2 guys you wanted to watch nuke each other and they just stand there after 2 rounds. So I think that Abdul can use his veteran experience to employ a later game plan. I don't think Abdul's going to come out right away kicking like crazy. Now he might be come out punching and kicking very quickly if Claudio draws that out of him. But if they start at a kind of measured pace and they're both waiting, I think Abdul uses his kickboxing experience and prowess to enter with his straight shots and get some underhooks going against the cage. If he was at all smart, he would want to deaden those arms of Claudio. Claudio already throws really wide, and just like I was talking about Priscilla, who stays inside the zone when swinging wide, Claudio will reach all the way back and leave his chin up and open. I could just see a Claudio with low arms getting tired, having his arms get even lower, and Abdul clean his clock. Abdul has seen the distance multiple times now inside of the UFC environment. It's a lot different than a regional circuit, so I think a veteran Abdul could employ a smart game plan here and maybe even get a late finish as well. Rounds 2 and 3 for either would be good for just the value for a round 2 and 3 finish. Round 1 is just too obvious. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I feel like the odds will not play in your favor. And then if they don't finish somebody in round 1, I feel like it'll just be such a letdown. So that'll be a fun fight nevertheless. I think it'll be a fun first round, and then we'll see how it goes. Or maybe it takes a second to heat up and it turns into a barn burner in the later rounds. All right, let's move on to our next one here. We got Raoni Barcelos versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I would be shocked if anyone watching this video didn't know either of these two guys. Both so fun to watch at 135. Of course, Umar is coming from the Dagestani region, and with the Nurmagomedov, sorry, my dog's being goofy over there. Umar has been training his entire life. I'm sure the same is with Raoni. Both are so fun to watch. Raoni is like a little mini fireball. You know, he comes forward, always throwing at 100%. Early on, we saw him I think there's a difference between gassing and conditioning. Gassing is when you're huffing and puffing, right? You got nothing left in the tank. And then there's conditioning when you're not just getting oxygen to your muscles anymore. You know, you're not dead friggin' tired, but man, your arms can't go anymore. I think that's what kind of happens with Timur and Victor against Raoni. I think he might just let a little too much of his load blow, and then he can't sustain it. He's not dead tired after 5 minutes, but it's hard to keep that kind of pace going. Now, outside of those two fights, Raoni is an animal, okay? I mean, he's beaten Said Magomedov, Khalid Tafa, Chris Gutierrez. Trevin Jones was a great performance of his. The man moves so well. Absolute athlete at 135. And man, that plus 500, I'm sure is going to be tempting for a lot of dog bettors there. There's just a lot of spots where Raoni sometimes leaves himself open. I believe he started as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and as a grappler most of his career, and then to realize he's got some power too and started knocking people out. But Umar is just so efficient, doesn't waste much, doesn't give up much either. Minus 900 is a massive price to pay on a money line, and I'm not sure if we'll be on that side either, heavily at least. Do I say Umar is worth not playing? No, Umar is the clear A side here. They're going to build up to the next Nurmagomedov, whether this is a win or a loss at the end of the day for Umar. They don't want him to lose here. I think that it's going to be a very competitive first round. Umar enters well with his shots behind his hands. He doesn't allow the enemy to get a start going on him, like sometimes you see on these Russian guys that, you know, have such a strong game plan with the grappling, entering to the body clinch, now we're at the legs. But sometimes if it doesn't go that way, they can get a little flustered. We saw that with Godzi on Ryzen recently. He got the W, but he couldn't implement his game plan for a little bit. Umar stays with it, man. When he fought Mayanes, I think a lot of people underestimated Nate in that fight, and Nate stood his own. He stood his ground, but I think that in standing his ground, Umar got to truly show that he does belong here. He's not just a rookie anymore. He will quickly be working his way up the rankings, and man, I really think we'll be seeing him fighting for title contention within, if not the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024. Barcelos has a chance early, and I think he knows that. But in knowing that, I think he might bank on that. Thinking that I can clip this kid, I can put him out of here. And I think he just puts too much steam in his punches early into the fight, and Umar slowly breaks him down. I don't think either of these guys are going to knock each other out. Both have amazing striking, but both are very technical. I think we see a competitive first round on the feet, and then I think we see them start to get a little closer. Whether that means Raoni is starting to dig to the body more and start using his hooks a little more because he likes to open up later, or we see Umar getting that shot, getting against the cage, and I could see him taking Raoni's back. A submission prop wouldn't be the worst play here. Raoni is a very hard guy to submit, but if anyone is training to do it, I'm sure Umar is. Over 1.5 would be a good look here, I think, as well. I'm not sure what the books are offering right now, but I think we just see a Russian masterclass tonight. Raoni's in for a good one round, I think, and then I think we just see Umar easily taking over and applying his game plan. Moving on to the next fight here, just a moment. All right, 3 fights left. Got Ketlen Vieira versus Raquel Pennington. Raquel is an absolute veteran. If you've been watching the sport for a few years now, or even the women's bantamweight division, she was a mainstay of that division for quite a while with her and the 4 Horsewomen. She is good at getting streaks going and then getting matched against unfortunate people. Her most recent losses, Holly Holm, Duran Durandamine, Amanda Nunes. I mean, you're talking about some of the best 45ers on the planet at that point. But recently we've been seeing the older veteran in Raquel get some momentum going. I think a lot of people discredit her because she doesn't have the speed or the power that you'd expect of someone that is that stature. I mean, she's a built girl, but she's really good at employing her game plan. I like the way that it can be boring, but I like the way she fights against the cage. She uses her size to be heavy on her opponents. I mean, just looking at her last fight with Aspen Ladd, Chiasson especially, I mean, that was a nasty guillotine. There's just a lot of opportunity for her to employ her veteran skills here. Ketlen Vieira has only been good when she can get her rhythm going. When she gets it broken up, just like Holly Holm, once again, I truly believe Holly Holm won that fight. When she can get her rhythm stopped by somebody, Ketlen forgets that she needs to reset. Resetting means getting back to your basics, throwing a 1-2, throwing a 3 low kick, resetting your rhythm. I think Ketlen Vieira can get her rhythm broken up. She gets in her head. She'll think she's winning a round and play her little game, and then all of a sudden she's behind again. Now, does that show every fight? No, but it shows when she fights veterans. There was some moments, even in her past fights, where she'll give up a position against the cage just in the sheer reasoning of being stronger. Like, she wants to get in there and hit the person hard, and now you're in a clinch that you shouldn't be in. She doesn't fight smart. She doesn't use her best IQ. She's got some good kicks to the body, but Raquel overall is the better fighter, the better MMA fighter. Decent boxing. It's slick. She's got good head movement, good volume. I think that one of Raquel's best attributes is she doesn't quit. You know, we've seen her in moments where it's been tough and bloody, and she keeps moving forward and has gotten some comeback wins. There's value on both sides here. I can't remember the line off the top of my head. I would believe it was close to even money last time. This is a clear over, I think. If you're playing a side, I think you should take decision as a prop as well for a sprinkle. I don't see either of these two finishing each other. I think it's going to be a little sloppy, a little grind out. We might see some cage grappling if Raquel chooses to do that. So we could see a close decision. And when we have a fight that we can almost expect to go the full distance, with recent judging, you just want to be careful on the side of money lines. Stick with the overs. Stick with the split decision prop, maybe even hedge with the decision prop. But I think this is a clear overside, whether that's parlaying a 1 over 1.5, but I think the odds are good enough on over 2.5 or even goes the distance to play that straight, or even find a good spot to pick that up with. Once again, I would suggest going heavy on either side. Nothing wrong with picking a side here. They both have some spots. Ketlen could maybe catch her with some kicks and then start implementing her game plan. Maybe Raquel gets tired out of her old age. I just don't see it. Raquel's pretty, she trains pretty actively, especially now that Tisha has the mother and is at home, or has a kid and has become a mother and at home. I'm sure Raquel's just been ramping up her training. But when you know it's going to go the decision, and with these risky judges, this risky betting lately on judges, I would just be careful what side you take, and I would just stick with an over when we can almost expect it to go over. And moving on to our co-main event, Punhale Soriano versus Roman Kopylov. I thought Roman I thought he was 2-2 when I initially checked this fight and did the tape. And then I realized he was 1-2 with the promotion. I guess that D'Alessio De Chirico fight was ringing more recently in my head, like he hadn't had another fight since then. But that was his most recent fight with that knockout. He looked good there, man. He uses mostly his hands. I noticed that he doesn't light up his combos like he should. Gets one off, stops. Gets one off, stops. When you're continuously picking somebody's face apart and you're finally setting your range, you shouldn't be coming off of the gas. You shouldn't be hitting the brakes. You should slowly be picking that up. Okay, I hit a 1. I'm gonna hit a 1-2. 1 low, 2, 3 now. Okay, 1 fake, 2, 3 low now. You know, you should slowly be stacking those combos up as you are most successful with them. And he got lucky with that in D'Alessio De Chirico, who leaves himself open sometimes, and Roman found the opening and starched him there. But if you look at his Carl Robinson and his Albert Duraev fights, a lot of it is pacing and putting it all together. I don't think Roman is just there yet. I think he's still a little green. Coming from experience, I thought I was ready to go pro like 2 years ago. And I'm not saying Roman isn't ready to go pro at all. I'm just saying I know what it's like to sometimes feel mentally ready for a position. And then you go through another couple fights and you're like, holy shit, I got stuff to work on. I think that's what happened with Carl Robertson in his loss to Albert Duraev. It was kind of similar. You know, he got submitted. I mean, I'm not saying it was similar. But he was slow in both of those fights. And I think he just realized he wasn't efficient enough. So he went back to the drawing board, worked on putting his punches together, and showed that against Alessio. But I just think he's still a little green. You know, we haven't gotten to see enough from him. And not only see enough from him, but we haven't seen him against someone like Punahale. Punahale is not only a power hitter, but he's efficient. He knows when to take it off the brakes a little bit. You heard me saying you can't go off the brakes. I'm saying you can't go off the brakes when you're slowly beating someone up. You need to go off the brakes when you're exerting too much energy. You know, if Punahale is landing a ton of combos and banging this guy up and boom, but the guy's still standing, okay, take a second, reset, don't get breathing too heavy, let's get back to our basics again, and then build up. I think that's what Punahale does a really good job of, is never overexerting himself in a combination. He trusts his power. He knows it's always going to be there through the 3 rounds. You don't see him dead tired too often. Just looking back at that last fight of Dolce Lucambolia, I know Dolce isn't some high elite level wrestler, but the man is an athlete, and Punahale showed that he was the heavier hitter in that scenario. Of course, he's got the loss to Brendan Allen and Nick Maximov, who are both grapplers by trade, I should say, both grapplers by trade. But he hasn't been finished recently, especially within the UFC. He's been on an absolute tear, was undefeated before getting his debut. Starched Dusko Todorovic, sorry. Punahale just doesn't waste much. I think, once again, just like Roman, they both had 2 similar fights where they got outworked. I'm sure they're going to both go back to the drawing board, and Punahale is going to realize that I have very clean boxing. I'm going against a clean boxer who also doesn't like to shoot like I do. What do you do when you have 2 boxers against each other? You need to find the boxer that has the better head movement, the better straight shots, and the better conditioning. I think Punahale has all of those. Punahale moves his head well in combo, in firefights. He sees well. He has better straight shots, and he has better conditioning throughout all of those rounds. And not only conditioning, but he carries the power. I think this is going to be a gritty first 2 rounds. I don't think we see an early knockout. I think these guys are both going to respect each other a little bit. If you're playing Roman, I would go with Roman finish only. I just don't see him winning the point fight against Punahale. Punahale's got a good jab. He controls the outside of the cage well. And I just don't see him losing minutes against Roman. If anything, it's Roman catches Punahale circling out and Roman gets a hook or maybe an uppercut against the cage. But I think Punahale implements his game plan quickly after round 1, and then starts winning minutes and goes to a unanimous decision. I think a lot of people are expecting the knockout here, but I think both of these guys respect each other a little too much to rush into that. And I think we might see a nice paced boxing fight here. I don't know if that's a shocker at all, but I think we might see a good paced boxing fight here. Not a lot of kicks, not a lot of grappling. And I think Punale comes out on top and wins all 3 rounds, to be honest. Moving on to our last fight of this card, the main event. I'm sorry. Not the main event. Co-main, I said that before. I'm not used to Sherdog. Dan Ige and Damon Jackson. This is a very interesting style matchup of 2 guys who are kind of in different spots in their career. Dan Ige's last 4 to 6 fights, man, have been a very unfortunate few fights to have. I mean, we're going to look at Josh Emmett, who I think Josh Emmett lost that fight, but he was given the decision. Mosfar Evloev, Chen Sung Chung, Gavin Tucker, and Calvin Kattar, Edson Barbosa. And now he's 2-4 in those last 6. Okay, I feel terrible for Ige because he gets thrown to the wolves. And man, I'm just looking at this, realizing that how terribly this has aged, this loss to Chen Sung Chung. When I was doing the tape the past couple nights, Dan Ige looks great when he's entering on his own accord. Does that make sense? He doesn't return well always. Like, I think the reason that the judges saw Emmett winning was because Emmett kept leading the dance and then Ige wouldn't return right away. He clipped Emmett a few times, but it was only when Ige had a moment to chill and sit, he would get off a combination and then that would win. It's hard to lose minutes against Ige because his volume is slowing down, I believe. Watching him get not ragdolled, but outsized in most of his fights is just a hard thing to put money on him, man. He's small. He's going to be a lot smaller than the frame of Jackson here. The over is going to be a great look. Watching Jackson's past couple fights, I'm really impressed with how he's turned his cardio around. That was one of his biggest concerns when betting him his past couple fights was his cardio. Even in his fight with Charles Rosa, actually, Charles turned on the burners kind of later in the fight and cut him open with that gash. And I've never lost that much blood from a cut, but I can't imagine that it helps your cardio to lose that much blood and makes you feel any better. And he did well. He kept it up and won on the cards there. But Jackson is a very funky style. If you look at his body, the way it's built, his shoulders are pretty wide, and then everything just shoots straight down the narrowness. Crazy long legs. But he uses all of that frame well. He throws his hooks with all of his shoulder, rotates through. He kicks with all of his length. He pushes through those kicks. And then notice he uses his kicks almost like a snap rangefinder, and then he'll plant into a punch. Snap up, fall down to the punch. So he's not always putting 100% of his power into everything. He's using his strikes to lead into his other strikes, and then those strikes become his lead-ups to his shots. His MMA grappling is phenomenal. I am very impressed with Jackson's ability to find the back consistently in scrambles, his ability to threaten submissions from different angles, rear naked chokes, arm bars. If you watch him strike, it's not world class. He doesn't look like a Thai fighter, a boxer, even a karate guy. It's kind of a weird blend of it all, and I feel like he uses whatever style he needs to enter into his grappling, whoever he's fighting. Of course, Dan Ige's defensive grappling, takedown defense, is some of the best at the weight class. But I think Dan is just slowing down a bit. Dan's best shot here is to implement his boxing, heavy hips, stay the fuck on his feet, and win minutes. He's got to be the bigger dog against Jackson. If he wants to win this, he's got to get inside, not let Jackson piece him up from the outside. I don't see him being the better grappler or winning grappling scenarios, but I could see him trying to tire out Jackson on the cage, maybe throughout the fight, and then tire Jackson out and win on the cards. But man, Jackson's no slouch. He's the younger kid. this might even be a setup fight. If you look at Dan Ige's record, he keeps getting fed to these guys that they want to build up and build to title contention. Mosfar, Josh Emmett, let me just go back here real quick. Calvin Kattar, just to name a few. And all of those guys are now ranked and fighting for titles soon, or already have fought for titles. And I'm not at all saying this is set up, but I think this is just a good fight that they're feeding to Jackson to test his mettle against veterans who have it all. Dan Ige can do it all. Dan can bang, he can take you down, he can get your back if he wants to, and he's got submissions to his name as well, I believe. But I think Jackson is just the guy to be on here. If you want to bet Dan, I don't shame you for it. You would think he's due for a win if you look at his record right now. But I think they're just slowly and kindly showing Dan the door by giving him some opponents that are just not good style matchups for him. Jackson should find his rhythm after the first 2 to 3 minutes, I think. I think Dan Ige is really good at getting feints off people when he people are afraid of his power, you know, so he'll get people to bite on his hooks and his overhands. So I think it might be a slow start at first, and then I think Damon starts finding his connections. You know, once you start touching somebody, you get a little more confident. And once that person touches you and you've been hit by them and you're okay, you get more confident too. So once these guys open up, I think we see quite the scrappy fight. Both of these guys are always in fun exchanges, never boring fights. So great co-main event spot. I see why they put this here. And I just feel bad for Danny Ige because it's another tough test. I'm not saying he loses, but man, you are once again being fed to a younger athlete who is kind of just a little quicker than you everywhere. And I think Jackson might be a little quicker in this one. Now, moving on to the main event to finish off our first card of the year. Sean Strickland versus Nasruddin Imavov. Man, I got to give Sean some props for taking this fight on, 4 weeks notice, 3 weeks notice, something like that. He went 5 rounds. That's one of my worries about him. He didn't get banged up too much. I'm sure, in Sean Strickland standards, I should say, I'm sure his brain is fine. But I just know he's a little chunky right now. He said he's about 215, 220. And this is going to be at 205. And Nasruddin is no joke. Of course, for Nasruddin, this is now a new style matchup. He now has to game plan in his head for a completely different guy. Gastelum is kind of a bulldog who's got some wrestling and okay boxing and head movement. And was going to be an easy cruise for Nasruddin Imavov. This should have been an easy night. And now he's got a totally new style matchup in Sean Strickland, who is very experienced in 5-round fights, amazing head movement, knows how to win minutes, knows how to stay on his feet, knows how not to get hit. I'm sure a lot of us have recency bias on that Alex Pereira performance of always chinny. But Sean knows how to take a punch, man. Sean knows how not to get taken down. He knows how to stay in fights. He knows how to win rounds. We were on the Jared Cannonier side of that last fight. So we came out on top. And that wasn't a razor close decision. I think Jared won that 3-2, if I remember right. Maybe 4-1. But it was close. You know, Sean, there was no time where it was like, wow, Jared's completely winning this fight and Sean's screwed. There were some close moments in that fight. And Nasruddin has not really fought someone like Strickland. And this is not Strickland's first rodeo with someone as well-rounded as Nasruddin. I would be worried betting on Nasruddin if this goes past 3 rounds. He has not had 5-round UFC experience. And that's pretty much all Sean Strickland fights nowadays is 5-rounders, main events, title fights, or fights guys way bigger than him, 4 or 5 rounds. So he's used to the pressure. He's used to that kind of pace that you need to keep. I think Sean knows he doesn't knock guys out. He said that in interviews saying, yeah, I'm going to do a little more than jab him to death all day. Now, does that mean Sean's going to chase for the knockout? Maybe not, but I think Sean knows that he is a really good point fighter. That's his path to victory here, and I think he's just going to add a little more to it. We might even see Sean Strickland go for a takedown here. Nasruddin's best chance at winning, I think, is honestly either a quick finish or slowly grinding out Sean Strickland. It's going to be hard to consistently piece him up every round. Sean Strickland, that is. It's going to be hard to hurt Sean Strickland round after round after round after round. And Jared even struggled with that. He might have been winning the rounds, but he wasn't getting off damage. You're not confidently winning, feeling like you're up. I think Nasruddin's best chance is to find big moments in rounds and win that way. You know what I mean? I think that Sean will still be the better athlete the whole way through. So Nasruddin needs to find his times, whether that be in the clinch, against the cage, bang, bang, bong, catch Sean, get out of there. Not consistently burn himself out. Because if he wants to match Sean Strickland's pace for 5 rounds, I think that's exactly how he loses. And I think he needs to be defensively smart and keep a good off and on pace. You know, get in there, win some moments, get out of there, chill. Get in there, win some moments, get out of there, chill. Don't play touch up with Sean Strickland. That can lead to a very close decision, which Sean could easily steal with a couple extra rounds. So, who knows? If you're taking this fight, I can almost assure you that a ton of people are going to be playing the over 4.5. That one might be a little risky just because who knows? Maybe one of these, maybe Sean finally gets a finish here. Maybe Nasruddin finishes him a little earlier than that. I do like an over 2.5, over 3.5 here for parlay line. I just think it's hard to couch Sean Strickland out, even on short notice, even right after a back-to-back fight. This is a style and a 5-round fight that suits him. Nasruddin's really going to have to push through Sean's annoying 1-2s to implement exactly the game plan he wants to. It's going to be a close fight early, and then I think whoever can pull away quicker wins. I know that seems so obvious, but I think it's going to be super close round 1, and then one of these guys is going to figure out what the heck they need to do to take this to their victory, if that makes sense. And that about wraps it up for our final card of the year. I know I kind of skimmed everything, or our first card of the year, I'm sorry. I know I kind of skimmed through everything and maybe didn't go super deep, but this is my first video breakdown. I just wanted to kind of touch on everything a little bit and give my opinions from fight to fight. We'll get better at this. This is my first time. I thank you all so much for joining and watching my first video. Weigh-ins should be tomorrow, and I will have leans and plays started to come out tonight. That's Thursday night. You can message me on Instagram. I'll put the link down in the description. You can shoot me a message on Instagram, and I'll give you a free link to join the Discord. Completely free. We do offer some VIP packages as well. We're averaging about 25 plus units a month. In some events, we've had almost 20 plus units on the night. So, and we got multiple packages. You can buy a week, you can buy a month, you can buy a year. It starts at, I think, $15 is a week at the plan from now on. And then you can buy a month. There's going to be some buy one, get one deals. But I really appreciate you guys joining. We'll have some free plays coming up as well. And man, what a good first card to start off the year with. If you guys have any thoughts or questions below on anyone or any plays you have, feel free to drop a comment, like and subscribe, and have a good day, everyone. Let's have a good fight night.